Do you really think your new Sequoia can handle terrible roads? It's too damn big. I took another sip of my Stan's Wicked Ale and continued. Of course you need legroom under the steering wheel. You're such a keg. But I don't know, Ted. I'd never take anything like that to the Turkey Trail. I had a hard time getting up there in my old Land Bruiser, and it weighs half as much. The toxic late afternoon light filtered through the smoggy trees. Just another early summer day in the Los Angeles basin in the first year of the 21st century. I reclined in my chaise lounge next to Ted. We watched our wives swim in Ted and Alice's backyard pool. For once, they dispensed with each other's verbal claws. Smoky mountains loomed over our neighborhood in Pasadena. Hey, they told me it could be anywhere, and that's where I'm going to go. Ted took a sip of Tooth's sheaf malt and belched. Yeah, I'm ready for the turkey run. I don't care about those horror stories. More energy. The worst road in Anza Borrego Desert State Park, between San Diego and the Salton Sea, has several birds' foot-shaped climbs, hence the name Turkey Trail. The best of these steep, nightmarish routes are characterized by huge holes and sheer cliffs. Often, slowly creeping upward, only 3 wheels actually touch the ground. My wary wife refuses to drive over such wastelands. She gets out of the car and waits for me to slide down. It doesn't happen. Nevertheless. Look, Anza Borrego is not a good place to be tested. I know for a fact you'll never make it through Fat Man's misery. Even a Suzuki Samurai needs a good lube-up to get through that narrow gap in the rocks. I took another sip of Wicked Ale and hoped he'd at least ponder that logic. Ted uncorked a fresh tooth sheaf and took a sip. Okay, smartass, where do you think we should go for Memorial Day weekend? And don't tell me we can go to Angeles Crest. It's always full of jeeps, samurais, and paratroopers. My naturally tanned wife Carol floated in our direction as well. Hey, you gotta give him a break, Alice baby. He's a man, you know? Thinks motors are macho, even the funny ones like the ones you're working on. She turned and looked at Ted and then at me. So tell us, Bobby, what kind of test track are you suggesting? Someplace not too boring to celebrate, right? I thought for a moment about how to put Ted at ease. I know just such a place. There are some great mining trails east of Palm Springs in the Chuckwalla Mountains. They're rough enough to be a good challenge, but probably won't kill us. In the Chuckwalla Mountains? That sounds nice, Alice said. Yeah, it's pretty picturesque there, Carol agreed. What, an agreement between those two? It's a miracle. 2 couples around the pool. We are Bob and Carol, they are Ted and Alice. We are friends and neighbors here in Pasadena. Alice and I work together. We travel together in our 4-wheel drive vehicles. Our kids play together, go to school together, and on this sweltering Sunday all walk together a dozen miles from Carol's house in Burbank. Yes, the Valley. We're raising a new crop of Valley girls, Val gals. Vacant to the max, dewy-eyed. Are we all best friends? Not really. Just close friends with common interests like pool. For the most part, we got along well with each other. And that's a good thing. Making new buddies is hard work. If only Carol wasn't so bossy and Ted wasn't so flighty. Meanwhile, we adults spent the afternoon and evening alone. There isn't much privacy in this suburban community. The homeowners association doesn't allow high fences. No swimming before dark. And even then you have to keep a constant eye out for nosy neighbors. Damn prudes. So we spent our time prudently, relaxing, joking, and flirting, getting a little drunk, chatting, sketching out plans and fantasies. Ted and I were slamming around making plans for our excursion. I don't know what the ladies were planning, other than to ride side by side, look good, and poke fun at each other every chance they got. The usual. We planned to spend 4+ days together on Memorial Day. Would it be fun? Ted ditched his 4-wheel drive 4Runner for a new Sequoia last week, and he really wanted to put it to the test, as if he even knew what that meant. I mean, Ted was a pretty good, albeit lazy, real estate broker, but as an off-road enthusiast, he suffered from adequacy mania. Truth be told, Angeles Crest would have been a better option for him. But no way in hell his ego would let him even think about it. At least he still remembers his first aid skills from his long-ago army service, so he's not a complete coward on our forays. Some bickering ensued as we socialized poolside, fueled by alcohol. Who brings how much? Who is responsible for food and supplies? And the eternal clash of characters. I'm focused, and Ted is relaxed and lethargic. Carol is dominant, and Alice can't take any crap. I don't take orders from you, Carol. Save it for your peons. Resented Alice. Carol just naturally took command at every opportunity. It's a cause, not a consequence, of her running her own media marketing agency. And it's a result of her legacy. Carolina Carrillo Ortega is the scion of a leading old Spanish family that lived in California before it was Mexicanized. Sarah's father founded the California missions in the late 1700s. Carol's Caballero ancestors were with him. These Hidalgo families cultivate arrogance. Humility is not helped by the fact that Carol's ancestors were Hollywood studio executives, and she herself was raised as a privileged valley girl. In her business, she ruthlessly exploits her cramped old Valhalla clique. She knows how to play networking games. I love her to death, but sometimes she drives me crazy. And so does everyone else, pro or con. My pedigree is almost as lofty. I'm Roberto Pico Ortega, and my family owned most of what is now Los Angeles until all the Spanish and Mexican holdings were stolen by the gringos. Well, that's history. I'm not going to be the lizard who brags that her grandfather was a T-Rex. Carol looked up at me. So, Bobby, are we going to swim some more, or are we going to get right to it? What, again? Hours later, the alarm clock rang. It was time to get dressed and go pick up the kids. Damn it. Monday morning. Another work week had begun. Alice and I had a short but tedious commute to Lunadyne, a small aerospace firm near Caltech and NASA JPL. My Beamer was rushing down the I-210 freeway at 10 miles per hour and accelerating to 15 in the fast lanes. Damn, I hate Monday mornings. At Lunadyne, I'm a skilled hotshot. I design exhausts for jet and rocket engines. Alice is a super-duper gizmo gal, designing and assembling prototypes of electronic control systems. She's a brilliant technician, a pretty red-haired girl and a great camper, but her hot temper and diminished social skills leave a lot to be desired. She's not smart enough to be a manager. We have a techie truism. Those who can engineer, those who can't engineer, manage. Those who can't manage, manage engineer. I've heard this is true in other technical fields. Alice and I are neighbors. We work together. We eat lunch together. We commute to work together. We swim and play with our buddies together. But no affairs. We don't talk about any of that stuff by the pool. I mean, we've both been there, so why bother? Our conversations on the way to work are about work, what our teams do, the usual political, religious, social, economic, and cultural crap, how humanity is screwing itself over, our four-wheeling trips, past and future. Good, safe topics. Are you ready for summer to start? Alice sipped her mocha and stared at the traffic. And do you really think Ted's up for a challenging trip? To Anza Barocho? No way in hell. We jokingly called Anza Borrego Park Anza Barocho. Borracho means drunk in Spanish. But in Chuckwalla's? Yes, the roads I'm thinking of look rough, but they're in much better condition. They should be able to support the weight of the Sequoia. Ted has been talking for months about moving from our old Forerunner to a new toy. And now he's got this big Sequoia, bought with my money, and he's just obsessed with trying it out. Yeah, trying it out and testing himself. As if off-roading is important to his masculinity, as if that excuses him. But he's just not an outdoorsman, not really. She took another sip of mocha. Alice and I had scouting experience when we were young. We had survival and amateur skills. We were engineers for crying out loud. We built things. Carol and Ted had been privileged city dwellers all their lives. They had a common motto: let someone else do it. That's why they ran their own offices and delegated all the crap work. I'm not really a cowboy, I just bought a hat, I sang. Ted runs rough roads to prove he's a rough guy. To do that, he needs a cool truck, so he buys one. But that's not enough. I sang again, a very different song. But he ain't got no cow lips. Alice hummed. Yeah, and you have caballero lips, same thing. But look where they got you. She pouted at me. They led me to a life with my Carolina, the girl of my dreams, I laughed. Not so bad, huh? Alice sighed now. Give me a break. I know she has a great body, but how can you put up with that bossy bitch? Thinks she's the commander-in-chief in all of goddamn Pasadena. Always telling me, calm down. Take a deep breath. Hold it in. Breathe it out. Hold it in. Inhale. Hold it in. Yeah, that's it. Screw you, buddy. She waved it away. I only have to put up with her once in a while. You get it all the time. I'm not complaining. I turned up the air conditioner a degree. The day was hot. Hey, did I tell you about your annoying deadbeat husband? Ted's name was on his real estate agency, but he hardly worked, if at all. Officially, he was a broker, but his staff kept the office running while he played golf or squash with clients, actual or potential, or performed other important management duties. Right. Yes, Alice admitted. Ted does lead a pretty easygoing lifestyle, but he's very good with kids, has lots of time for them and errands. And maybe he's a little insecure, since I'm the primary breadwinner. You men have such fragile egos. Well, yes, of course, I said. I'm declaring a truce. How's the XJ9E project coming along? We returned to the safe territory of store talk. The week. I doubt either of us did much real work that early summer week before Memorial Day, 2001. Sure, we worked a lot, but mostly on the logistics of our trip. Alice and I were making gear lists and sending our companions to the store for the essentials. Rather, they were sending their movers to do the shopping. After all, that's what movers are for, right? Our kids, as usual, tried to ignore us, but we put them to work too. I'm going to run through the checklist again, Dolly. Start with, why do I have to do this? Whined my youngest daughter, Dolores. I have to do my homework. Right, and you'll do it right after we're done. Sometimes I think my daughters are socially retarded. They haven't yet learned how to manipulate their parents. What's wrong with today's kids? But you always make me do everything, my little drama queen whined. Why can't Rosie do it? Because Rosalita is busy helping your mom with her checklist. We're equal opportunity oppressors, you know. Now stop complaining and start on the camping gear. A tent. I don't care about your stupid tent, I said firmly. Check the tent. The sooner we're done here, the sooner you can do your homework, watch TV, play games, and call your friends. Sure, you can whine to them about how we're abusing you. But above all, pattern. Okay. Yeah, it's a tent from Sierra Designs, the one that smells like moldy nylon shea. Shit. Tongue. Okay, what about poles, pegs, rain netting, and ground cloth? Yeah, they're all here. All that dirt. Okay, there's a dozen metal stakes here, and none of them look bent, and so on, point by point. We checked the camp gear, tools, spare parts, and necessary items for the Land Cruiser. Carol and Rosie probably did the same with kitchen equipment, first aid kit, clothing, and supplies. I double-checked the maps and electronics myself. Alice was as meticulous as I was, and no doubt her kids, Suzanne and Carrie, were doing the same, except that Daddy Ted wasn't much help. Sure, he pretended to test all the functions of his new four-wheeler, but he avoided any real hands-on work or concern. Let someone else do it. Some of the decisions were easy. The kids would stay with Carol's family again, taking their pets with them. No dogs, cats, ferrets, or iguanas on this trip. Each couple took a tent and sleeping gear, a folding table and chairs, food, plenty of water and spare gasoline, various tools and portable VHF radios as a backup for cell phones. In steep and narrow arroyos, cell phone service and GPS would not work well, and radio time was free while cell phone time was not. Non-perishables were listed and loaded as we completed the checkout. Careful organization in the style of an engineer is how to make an adventure survivable. Pay attention to reality. Ah, reality. What is reality? Reality is crucial. The old hippie definition. Who needs reality when you have a good fantasy? Reality is a key. A friend has an ancient panel truck with a rattled transmission. This message is painted on his dashboard. Reality is the thing that stays after you refuse to believe in it. This should be pretty obvious. Does gravity disappear if you don't believe in it? Reality is what bites you in the ass. If it affects you, then it's reality. Otherwise, why worry about it? I always adhere to the definition of bites your ass when planning off-road trips and building turbos and exhaust systems. Injury and death certainly bites you in the ass. Checking and packing went slowly and easily over several days and evenings. By Thursday evening, we were loaded, fueled, and ready to go. Friday. We all agreed on a half day, or less, on Friday to get an early start. Walk into the office, shuffle papers, have a quick lunch, and leave. It was very easy for Carol and Ted, who just had to give the order to make it happen. Alice and I were the stars at Lunadyne, so we had no problems either. We easily opened the door to summer. Our little caravan set off just after noon, after the usual banal internecine squabbles. Ted and Carol both deserve to have the words PETA tattooed on their foreheads. That's right. Pain in the ass. Noon was early enough. We didn't have to fight traffic for 100 miles. We had a smooth ride to the outskirts of town on the far outskirts of San Bernardino and Redlands. Only a few jerk drivers deserved to be yelled at. Only a few truckers tried to kill us. Carol tapped away on her little Sony Vaio mini laptop as we drove and chatted about life, about the kids and their schoolwork, about our friends, about all sorts of stuff. A little bit of talking, a little bit of keyboarding. Deb, this is the Little Mac account, that's what we call it. We contracted with the California Macadamia Council for a marketing plan to make macadamias the most popular nuts in the world. Peanuts are going down, but almonds are on the rise, as are pistachios. That's their competition. You must be nuts to take this job, I joked. She sent me an unfunny grin. Okay, you've already heard about it. Macadamia? Really? Do they even grow in California? Of course they grow, but not very many. Most of them come from Australia, then Hawaii, then Central America and other places. The council believes that increasing demand for macadamias from anywhere in the world will help local growers. That's the work we're doing. I'm just trying out some ideas. She tapped the keyboard again. Well, they certainly taste good, but so do a lot of other products that don't sell well. I jerked the steering wheel to get around the slow pickup. This place doesn't just have nuts for smoothies and snacks. They make pasta flour. You just have to try the honey macadamia pancakes. Macaroni milk, macaroni butter, macaroni cheese. This one's not so good. Macaroni candy, yeah, all kinds of crap. But not a lot of people know about all that stuff. Yeah, that's our job, to capture eyes and minds. So you do advertising strategy? That doesn't sound like your usual specialty. No, not traditional advertising. The Mac board of directors wanted some cute slogan like Mac Snack Attack or I'm Nuts for Macs on TV and billboards. This is the 20th century. No, we'll run a viral campaign on the web. Start friendly, casual weblogs, subtly infiltrate news groups, forums, and chat rooms, but no junk mail, no spam. That's cowardly. Make it look grassroots, spontaneous, organic, with recipe clubs and idea sessions, all very modest. And it's going to be an internet-only campaign? Has anyone tried something like this before? A few. We're tracking how others are doing it. The best part is that it's very, very cheap. No expensive media buying, no mass targeting. It's more about creating an atmosphere. Create an atmosphere where Macs are a matter of course, a staple. Macadamia is on every shopping list. And how do you create an atmosphere? I looked at the troposphere surrounding us, draped in smog, and envisioned vapors of nuts. There are a million possible approaches, and we can try them all, almost for free. Each tactic will be tried separately. Change a few words and images, and measure the response. Keep what works and discard what doesn't. Our software generates automated messages that feel personalized. The artificial intelligence program reads the responses and adjusts to them, or asks a human for help. This is really the only cost item, and we take it offshore. Oh, hi. And she was tapping away at the keys again. High mountains surrounded us as we were interrupted. Carol removed a crackling VHF radio from its mount on the dashboard. Say that again, Alice. I didn't catch that. I said we could use a break. Let's stop by the dinosaurs in Cabazon. Got it. We'll take the Cabazon exit. I'll see you under the Bronto. It was actually a hollow concrete apatosaurus, 150 feet long. There is no such creature as a brontosaurus, but that's what they called it when they built it. I rolled our sandy beige Land Cruiser up to the restrooms. Ted's red Sequoia pulled up right behind us. The women hopped to the restrooms. Ted and I stretched out and looked at the dinosaurs, Big Dinny, think Alley-Whoop, and tall T-Rex. Cabazon is just a village in a deep cleft between high mountain ranges, San Bernardinos to the north and San Jacintos to the south. Dinosaurs dominated the site of the freeway for decades until the Morongo Indians of the Cahuilla tribe built a multi-story casino nearby. I'll never forget the first time I stopped here with Alice, Ted said. He sipped from a can of soda and waved at Dinny. Even before we were married, I took her with me to a realtors conference in Palm Springs. We drove up from LA and she needed a pee break, just like today. She finished and we went up the stairs to the gift store. There was no one there. And now it's a creationist museum. Those guys are really dumb. But that's okay with me because they're not too critical of the contract details. Damn, I love selling to Cretan fanatics. They'll believe anything. Even when he's right and funny, Ted can be annoying. Alice came out of the restroom looking somewhat annoyed, but not quite pissed off. Carol came out a minute later, walking even slower. I guessed that their argument inside wasn't too unpleasant. Why did I assume they were fighting? Because they fought a lot. 2 alpha bitches and no submission. Ouch. We went back to our cars. I took the lead again. Carol started talking. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear it. Just stop bullying Alice. Carol opened her mouth. I waved my hand again. No. Just no. She sullenly turned back to her Vaio. By the time we crossed Whitewater Pass, a 2-mile gap in the coastal mountains, and descended past sweltering Palm Springs into the Colorado Desert above the Salton Sea, the sun was already high and mighty. Waypoints: Desert Hot Springs, Palm Desert, Indio to refuel and snack on date shakes, then back above sea level and over Kiriako Peak into Chuckwalla Valley. South to the turnoff to the mine road in front of Desert Center. And here we were. We stopped behind the gravel road fence. Everyone got out of the car to stretch, breathe in some summer dust, and assess the situation. I waved at Ted, pointing to a map spread out on the hood of my Land Cruiser. He fussed. Where's the trail, Kemosabe? Ted covered his eyes theatrically and unnecessarily, looking around. The sun was already behind us. Over there, Tonto, I gestured to the southeast and smirked. Ted either didn't know or didn't care that Tonto was Spanish for idiot. I pointed to the map. We'll get off at the Red Cloud Mine trailhead and head for Chuckwalla's. The road past the mine is rough, but okay, and I know a good camping spot. Of course, we still have 3 or 4 hours of daylight left, but the sooner we get down today, the sooner we can start in the morning. Come on down. We got into our saddles and drove into the deserted mountains. I drove past spiny ocotillo thorns, prickly jumping and regal prickly cacti, sprawling green creosote bushes, and sword-shaped yuccas, climbing up a steep path through deep, narrow ravines to a wide, flat area where Carol and I were already camped. I parked in a familiar spot near the fire pit. Ted pulled in next. I'd chosen this place by the realtor's rule. Location, location, location. Open yet secluded. No one could sneak up on us. Yes, it made a difference in privacy. But most importantly, it was a direct line of sight to the cell tower at Siriaco Summit. We called home to let them know we got there okay. Everything is right, exclaimed Carol, jumping out of the Land Cruiser. We're back in nature, so let's all get out in nature. I need to feel the air. Damn, this is great. We set up our folding tents, laid out tables and chairs, and organized a minimal kitchen. Camp was set up. And Carol turned on some salsa music on her tape recorder and started dancing. I joined her. Ted placed an icebox under the table filled with chilled wine and beer. Alice handed out drinks to everyone and twirled in a dance around Ted, her long, straight hair flowing like cherry cider. The sun disappeared behind the high western mountains as we frolicked and howled. Ted and Alice cooked a hot supper, and Carol and I built a fire at Presto Log. No, we're not burning native vegetation. Dinner, wine, cleanup, jokes, and songs, gazing into the flames. It was a good night. Saturday. We all emerged from our tents in tracksuits and grim smiles. Alice fired up the Coleman propane stove to boil water for a Mexican mocha, instant coffee plus cocoa plus tequila. Ted made hearty burritos for us. Breakfast of champions. We warmed ourselves by the morning fire, and after Ted and Carol chatted a bit about business, began discussing the day ahead. There is virtually no cell service or GPS where we are headed. As soon as we leave camp, the phones will be dead. And any rock wall over 45 degrees high will block satellites and GPS. So let's keep our VHF radios on. Hints, barbs, and giggles sounded as we set up camp. Our gear was folded and repacked, strapped down tightly to survive the shaking. The trash was burned, the embers of the fire thoroughly doused. The only traces we left behind were cold ashes and disturbed dust. We are responsible campers. It was a fun day. We hiked down blistered dry scour holes and down uneven rocky trails to old mines and adits. We had to chain the four-wheel drive vehicles together to traverse some steep, muddy sections and eroded dips. We got dirty. When we set up at a remote campground in the evening, we were all sweaty, dirty, and exhausted. The showers we'd set up at the campground were as good as it gets, as was the sunrise tequila dessert. I'm getting ahead of myself. Our new camp was within line of sight, barely, of a cell phone tower. We called home to see how things were going. Carol's folks handled minor childhood crises with their usual aplomb. No one missed us much. Carol and Ted plugged their mini laptops into cell USB adapters and called the office servers to transfer emails and notes. Everything was fine. Well, everything was fine except the weather forecast. We got a warning of a storm coming in from the southeast. The monsoon came a month early. Usually wet weather comes from the Gulf of Mexico in early July. Tucson's tradition is dry on the 4th, wet on the 5th. But not this year. Looks like those climate change guys were right after all. The rain isn't forecast to reach us until after Memorial Day, Monday, when we make the return trip. So no problems, right? Problems can wait until tomorrow. Oh dear. Coyotes howled in the distance. Strange lights flashed overhead, and there were roars and rumbles in the distance. It wasn't surprising. We were camped just north of the Chocolate Mountain Proving Grounds, where the military practiced bombing and strafing anything. The strobe lights flashed. Coyotes sang again. Summer bugs flew and crawled. Navy and Marine Corps aviators whizzed by. I don't know about you, but these flashes get me excited. Carol, too. Again, the flashes and roar overhead, the howling and rumbling in the distance, transitioning into more rumbling and howling on the ground. Sunday morning. Dawn came earlier than yesterday. The camp was on the eastern slope of Chuck Wallace and caught the glare of the sun rising over the vast expanse of the Sonoran Desert, stretching more than 100 kilometers to the invisible Colorado River, the west coast of Arizona. All around us were the soft calls of desert thrushes, white and mourning doves. We dressed lightly in shorts and t-shirts for another breakfast of champions. We rolled camp and drove up the slope, over the saddle and back up the west slope, into a tight network of deep rock outcroppings, towered over by creepy Joshua trees and bulky ironwoods, just below the pinyon and juniper zone. As we descended the steep sandy slope, I made a mistake on a turn. We slipped and bounced hard on a hard granite piece of quartz monzonite. I pressed down on the gas pedal. The engine kicked off, but the car didn't stall. Uh-oh. Ted and Alice's Sequoia was driving ahead. I honked to get their attention. Ted carefully backed up. We all stood there looking at the situation. Nice move, smartass, Ted hummed. I was forced to agree. Let me take a look. I crawled under the car. The oil pan looked normal, as did everything else, except for the U-joint. It was broken. Damn. I climbed out and delivered the bad news. You brought tools and parts with you, right? Demanded Carol imperiously. Tools, yes. Lots of spare parts, yes. A spare hinge, no. I could probably put it back together if we had welding equipment, but we don't. I felt grim. What about soldering? Asked Alice. You packed a soldering kit, didn't you, Ted? Yes, it's there, said Ted. But will the torch solder withstand a U-joint? I thought about it. No, not under very hard use. It'll probably hold up to pretty quiet riding if you don't stress it too much. No sudden starts or stops, just good steady pressure. But you may have to tow us back to I-10, or at least the last downhill. Once we get there, it's only a few miles to Desert Center. I can replace the hinge there. You'd better get a ration kit, Ted. We don't want to be stuck here all day, Carol ordered. Yes, Your Highness, right away, Your Majesty, Ted muttered, and began grumbling as he rummaged around in the back compartment of the Sequoia. I grunted too, pulling hydraulic jacks and a toolbox out of recesses. We jacked up the disabled Land Cruiser. I climbed under the car. Alice handed me the tools I demanded, like a surgical nurse hands me forceps and scalpels. The job of removing the broken part was easier than I expected, because a strong, cool breeze came up from the southeast. The breeze was very refreshing, even humid. I crawled back out, Alice helping me stand up. Ted and Carol were standing a little farther away, talking quietly. I looked up at the increasingly overcast sky. Alice's eyes followed mine. I heard her swallow. Is that what it looks like? Asked Alice. Yes, she had come to the same realization I had. The monsoon came very early, didn't it? A raindrop fell on my forehead. Another hit her glasses. I guess I'd better get to work. It didn't take long to clean and solder the parts. The joined part sizzled as it cooled among the scattered raindrops. I covered the hot part with a scrap of cactus to shelter it from the intensifying rain. Guys, I turned to Ted and Carol. Conference time is up. We have to get out of this sink now. They looked at me questioningly. I nodded toward the storm clouds whipping across the peaks above us. This is the time and place for flash floods. Ted, grab the chains. Let's see, I said, looking around, then pointed to a hilly upland 100 yards away. We'll be safe there, but we must move. This was not easy. We chained the cars together and secured the cable from the Sequoia's front winch to a thick old tree halfway up the slope. Four-wheel drive and the winch were enough to pull the Land Cruiser out of the scour hole and almost to the anchor tree. And just in time. We heard a roar, almost the same as the airplanes that had flown over last night, but much closer and louder. The ground shook. The rocks rumbled. And then all hell broke loose beneath us, a frothy, furious downpour. Waves of muddy water carried boulders, uprooted brush, stumps, and cactus corpses, even an antelope. Another 90 seconds and we, too, would have been lost in the maelstrom. I looked at Carol sitting in the passenger seat. Her natural tan had discolored to an almost albino pink pallor. Oh, shit, she whispered. That was damn close, wasn't it? She trembled. I reached for her. It was too close. But we're safe now. From the flood anyway. We'll get out of this, don't worry. I stroked her bare thigh encouragingly. I wasn't really worried myself. The VHF radio crackled. I pressed the button. What's up, buddy? Ted's cheerful voice sounded a little strained. We're fine now, and thanks for your help. But we'd better get up on that level ground so I can go back underground and collect that sucker. There's a big pinyon pine there that we can get a hold of. In a few minutes, we were hoisted up on winches and brought to a stable position. The storm swept past the peaks. The wind and rain had subsided to zero. The overcast weather thinned, sunlight shining through. We stood together in a sudden calm. "Gee, that was exciting," Alice said. "So what now?" "We're not going anywhere for at least an hour," I said. "That'll be enough time to make sure we don't get flooded again, and to let the sand soak through and get hard enough to ride on." "Carol and I had an idea before we even got up here," Ted said. "Your brazed U-joint may or may not hold up. This ditch leads right to the trail to the Red Cloud mine, right? We thought we'd stop by the parts store in Desert Center and get a new one. They only cost a few bucks, right? And if we're going to do that, we better do it today. Tomorrow's a holiday and most of the stores will be closed." I hesitated. "Yeah, that sounds reasonable. But maybe you should take Alice? Why does Carol have to go with you?" "Because it was my idea. And anyway, I haven't ridden in Sequoia yet." There was determination in my wife's voice. Alice looked at Carol, then at me. "Oh, let them ride." I thought perhaps she was annoyed at having to listen to their banal business chatter and entertainment. I hesitated, but seemed to be outweighed. "Okay, let me find the part number. Get a factory part, not one made in China, and keep the VHF just in case." We secured a tarp shelter on the trunk of the Land Cruiser and laid out a table and chairs. We would be comfortable waiting. I walked down to the scour and stood on the packed sand, testing it out. It seemed solid enough. The water had stopped flowing an hour ago. I climbed back up. Alice and I hugged and kissed our friends before they left. "You know what it's really like, don't you?" Alice turned to face me. "No, tell me." I really gave no warning. "They want to hang out together for fun." I must have pictured a classic open-mouth double-take. "What, cheating on us? My Carol? Your Ted?" I shook my head. "That's what this weekend is all about. They planned it. Not the damage, of course, but they knew they'd find an excuse to get away together. To get away somewhere private." There was sadness in Alice's voice, but conviction. "And what makes you think they were planning something?" "Ted's a little careless with email, passwords, and computer security in general. He sends everything to the kill folder, empties the recycle garbage can, even defragments, but he doesn't do any disk cleanups, so it's easy to recover." Besides being great with circuits, Alice was also a DOS, Windows, and Nix guru. She knew her shit, and she knew about security and encryption. Some of the little things he did and said made me wary. Hacking into his laptop was child's play. There's probably traces on Carol's Vio, too. Would you like to take a look? My insides rumbled, but not from hunger. Did I want to see proof of my beloved's lifelong infidelity? Did I want to know I'd been turned a blind eye? Not really, but it's probably better. Let's see if she left it in the car. Carol picked up her purse, but not her laptop. I started it up. Alice took control and played it like the maestra she was. "What's her usual password?" "I think she mostly uses her date of birth, the 20th of October 65. "Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, right into her email. Nothing weird about that. Now I'll check her mail for the last couple weeks. Yep. There's a bunch of emails from Teddy, but they're encrypted with a different password." Alice tried several password cracking schemes. "Maybe my birthday?" I suggested. "Wait, I have an idea." She pressed the key again and shrieked softly. "Got one. Guess what? She used Teddy's birth date." She scrolled through the decrypted message on the screen. There were glowing liquid crystal symbols, plots, plans, love notes. It looked like they'd been entertaining them for at least a few weeks. There were also mentions of a project that could get them into legal trouble. But none of the letters contained any details of the project. "What is this project?" muttered Alice, almost to herself. Let me scan her My Docs folder tree. Tip, tap, tip, tip, tap. No, there's nothing there. At least nothing obvious. Where else could this material be? She opened the file manager window. Ah, yes, the memory card. I wonder what's on it. A few more keystrokes and another, aha, now Teddy's password again? Yes. And then, oh shit. I crowd next to Alice, our heads almost colliding. We read it together. Plans to defraud Ted and Carol's clients? Plans to move their accounts to offshore banks? Plans to move their money out of the United States? Plans to just abandon their families? Alice shook her head. I knew Teddy had some schemes, but I didn't expect anything like this. I didn't find any of it on his laptop. They probably both keep their important stuff on memory sticks, nothing on servers or local hard drives. If Carol had pulled the thumb drive, we'd never know. She looked at me. As long as they kept their computers offline with the memory cards inserted and pulled them out before plugging them in, no search would have ever found those materials. The most reliable way to transfer data is to just hand someone a flash drive. I let paranoia bite me. They can't think they can get away with this, much less a 1-2-3. No way. They must have some kind of plan to shift the blame. What's their backdoor? What's their scapegoat? Who's going to be scammed? Are we in danger? Alice's eyes sank into mine. Do you think they'll try to burn us? Wouldn't you? I asked. Yeah, paranoia runs deep. She turned back to the keyboard again. I'll check the later files. Ah, yes, here we are. Tick tock 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 tock. Shit. This is a setup. She swiped her finger across the screen. They'll run all the stolen money through our personal accounts and then fake their disappearance, but with traces showing that we ran the scams and took out our innocent spouses when they got suspicious. They will go to Rio. We're going to jail. Nice. My head went spinning. This wasn't rocket science. This was worse. Want to know what I was thinking and feeling at that moment? A whirlwind of explosions in my head, a froth of emotions raging inside me. A loud, "this can't be," echoing in the empty corridors of my hopes. Gut churning, almost to the point of nausea. Confusion. Pain. I looked at Alice. As you asked before, what now? Well, I think our happily married life is over, Kaput. What can we do? Take this to the police? If Ted and Carol get caught, they'll spend all our joint money on lawyers. We'll be broke, and our kids will. Hell, I don't know what. I don't have a family here like you guys do. No support system. She looked the saddest I'd ever seen her. I touched her chin. We're engineers. Let's structure the problem and the possibilities, right? She nodded. I continued. So our comrades are lost to us. They plan to screw us. No matter what we do, we're getting a divorce. What else is there to do? We could turn them in, and like you said, they'll break us. We could tell them we know their plans and just kick them out. And then they could fight for child custody, property division, all kinds of shit, and still break us. Could we shut down their business and break them ourselves? Could we? I left the thought unspoken, but Alice read my face. No, no physical attacks. That's not even a last resort. I sighed. I could never physically hurt Carol, no matter what she planned or did. I loved her too much. I saw similar feelings flash across Alice's lips, cheeks, and eyes. I sighed again. But the image stayed in my brain like a still from a death movie. Alice and I waiting on the slope. Sequoia is climbing back up the slope. We push a block of rock. It collapses, crushing the car and our comrades in treason. Such a tragedy. But no, we can't do that. I tried to reason logically again. Okay, what are our options? Do we snitch on them now or wait until we get home? Do we try to send a message, maybe to Lunadane, something to back us up to show we know what's going on? I felt like I was grasping at straws. Alice brightened. That's a start. Can we see the cell tower? We can call the office phones. It's a holiday weekend, so it'll go straight to voicemail. We can tell them what we've learned. Then if anything happens to us, we'll have a trail to follow. And if there are arrests, we'll have documentation. And I have spare memory cards. I'll copy everything, and we'll have even more evidence. Good ideas, I said. But we still need to get out of here in one piece, so we should play dumb when they come back. For now, it's fine. We'll act like normal. But yes, we should make preemptive calls. Start copying all the emails and notes. I'll try to find a good way to signal. I checked the topographical map. I had a good idea of our location, and the map showed a straight line to the cell tower from a nearby notch just a couple 100 feet above us. I see a good perspective. I turned to Alice, climbing up the slope. I held my Nokia phone like a water carrier's willow wand, looking for a stream. There were no streaks. I climbed higher. No bars. I reached a notch. No. Maybe on the sides of the notch, I thought. I climbed up the rock face. The stack of granite boulders rose 25 feet above the surface of the slope. Many of the boulders reached 10 feet across. Spiny cacti protruded from some places. I carefully climbed to the top and pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. 1 bar. "I've got a signal," I shouted. Then I shouted something without words. When I turned around, the rock shifted. I mean, it shifted. That is, the big goddamn pile of big goddamn rocks I had climbed on decided to go in a different direction. I mean down. And me along with them. It's a very creepy feeling. Everything's silent. You're on top of the world. Then the world disappears and you fall. And the world falls with you. Not little grains of the world. Huge chunks of the world. Most of which are much bigger than you. And all of which are ready, willing, and able to thoroughly pound you into a strawberry mass. And I used to dance on this rock mound with boulders as dance partners. Uh-oh. I was expecting to hear, nothing but oblivion. But that didn't happen. When the sound resumed, I heard rumbling all around me. I didn't hear my ankle crunch. I did, however, hear myself mutter, "Oh, shit." Do you believe in miracles? Up to this point, no, not really. But after that moment, I was alive and awake and bruise-free, lying on an uneven sandhill and completely unharmed except for a numb, broken ankle. A miracle. Alice ran up the slope to where I lay. "Bobby, oh, Bobby," she sobbed. She threw herself down beside me. "Bobby, please be alive. Please don't die. Oh, Bobby, Bobby." I shifted my gaze from the nearest peak to her tear-drenched face. "I'm not dead, Alice. I'm not even badly hurt. But my ankle is broken. That's all, I guess. Calm down, Alice." Alice pressed herself against me, lying on the damp sand, clinging to me, kissing my face and sobbing. "Oh, shit, Bobby. I heard that rumble, and I looked up, and you were falling along with the huge rocks. I thought for sure you were dead. You're my best friend, Bobby. I can't lose you. Oh, shit, Bobby." Alice pulled herself together and sat up. She stood and wiped the sand off her jean shorts. "You can't stay here. I'll take you to the Land Cruiser. Maybe, yeah, if you can stand on one leg, I'll support you." We slowly made our way down the slope to the car, me bouncing on my good leg with my arm around Alice's shoulders, step by step, stumbling. A couple times I almost fell into a thicket of prickly cacti. I sank down onto a folding chair. Alice moved my legs over to the other chair so my feet were elevated, and I leaned back. It was almost a relaxed pose. "You can't stay there. I'll get the camp ready and tuck you into the tent. You need to lay out in the sun and weather until they come back." Alice fussed with the gear, and soon I was lying inside, snuggled in, putting my feet up on the air cushions. My head was resting against the tent door. She sat down on the ground next to me. "You're a lucky man. Except you didn't get smashed to pieces, I mean. But I remember enough first aid rules from my scouting career. Your legs are up, you're not in shock, your skin isn't clammy, your pupils aren't constricted, just pain." She looked into the medical bag. "Okay, here are the painkillers. Better not wash them down with tequila." I swallowed the pills, washing them down with Gatorade. But now all we can do is wait. Teddy was a medic in the army. He'll know what to do with you. Remember, we're playing dumb. Don't let them get suspicious. We waited and chatted and made plans and waited. Sunday afternoon. The sun had passed the zenith. It felt like summer had arrived. Ted and Carol had been gone for 5 hours. Okay, I can understand it took them an hour each to drive to and from the desert center. But an extra 3 hours? I wonder what excuses they'll come up with. There was an occasional crackle on the VHF, but no clear signal. Alice tried several channels, but there was no answer. The rocky canyons blocked the radio waves too well. It was as if we were in an electronic dead zone with no way in or out. Finally, we heard the rumble of the engine. The Sequoia climbed up the bank, then up the slope and parked next to the Land Cruiser. Ted and Carol looked rumpled and ungroomed as they got out of the car. Hey guys, sorry it took so long. We had to pull tree trunks and debris out of the trails. The winch can only do so much. We had to put a lot of effort into it, Ted explained. Ah, so that was the excuse. Hey Bobby, my favorite wife asked. Why are you in the tent? Are you okay? I had a little accident, I said. Fell off a block of rock. I'm just clumsy as hell. I know my ankle is broken. I think that's it. Carol looked shocked. She ran over to the tent and knelt down beside me. Oh my God, Bobby, are you okay? She held my head, asking this stupid question. If I was okay, I wouldn't be lying here, I thought quietly. I've had better days, but I think I'm still okay. I smiled weakly. Ted switched into war medic mode and knelt down next to me. Broke, huh? Let me check you out. Alice, could you get my first aid kit from the trunk? Yeah, right. Carol, you're going to have to let go of his head. He looked at my pupils, felt my skin, skull, and neck, measured my pulse and blood pressure. Your vitals are normal. He reached into my tent and gently felt my leg. Does it hurt? Does it hurt? Ouch! Okay, it does hurt. Yeah, it's broken, it's fine. I can set it right real quick. He pulled out an inflatable splint from his kit, wrapped it around my swollen ankle, and inflated it. Are you on pain medication? I grunted a yes. That's about all I can do right now. I can inject you with a dose of Demerol if it really hurts. Nothing life-threatening, but you'll need to have an X-ray. And I want to make sure you don't go into shock. The question is, Carol turned to Ted, what do we do next? Do you try to tow us out of here? Or just take Bob to the doctor, or what? I intervened. Look, I can't walk, but I can crawl, and the other parts of me still work. You can stick me under the Land Cruiser and I can bolt on a new joint. And then, I don't know. I guess I'll put stuff in the back so I can lie down with my leg up and brace it. Alice, you're a good driver. Better than Carol in the countryside, right? Carol nodded. I confess I'm not good at driving on rough roads. All right then, Ted said. Alice and I will drive. Now get the Land Cruiser fixed and ready. The sooner we get you out of here, the better. Raindrops were falling all around us. Yeah, sooner is definitely better than later. All three of us helped me get under the landing gear. I quickly replaced the hinge. I was surprised when Carol told Ted and Alice to walk around for a few minutes, and herself climbed in beside me and hugged me. On my undamaged side. Phew. Oh, Bobby, are you okay? Really? No nonsense? She looked and sounded upset. Was this woman really going to betray me like I'd read in her notes and emails? I knew she could act and manipulate like a champ. Was she really faking it? She certainly seemed sincere. Like I said, I'm feeling better. I admit I was worried when those boulders went out from under my feet. Oh, Bobby, I couldn't lose you. I just couldn't. The rain intensified as they carefully pulled me out from under the car and then loaded me inside. The passenger seat was folded forward, and half of the back seat was cleared and covered with unfolded sleeping bags. I was laid on my back, head forward, legs raised on a bag stuffed with pillows. Ted secured my leg with a stick so it would be immobilized and I wouldn't hit my ankle. All set? Came Carol's voice over the VHF radio. I turned on the microphone. Looks like we're ready. Okay, let's go. Ted took the lead. Alice kept to about 20 yards, and even more on the steep climbs. The rain had turned into a dense, dark downpour. I can't even see Sequoia. It totally sucks, Alice said. I couldn't see the surrounding area, only the unforgiving sky, but I had to agree. I clicked on the microphone again. Can you guys see anything up there? What does the track look like? Carol's voice came over the air. We're just around the corner in front of you. I think we're approaching a side scour and… The radio cut off. I heard a roar, a crackle, and more roaring. Stop! Yelled I. Alice slowed down and stopped. I pressed the microphone again. Carol, are you there? Carol, answer me! Nothing. Alice hit the parking brake and sprinted out the door. She returned 8 seconds later, looking furious. Hold on! She shouted. I gripped tightly into the back of the seat as Alice drove the four-wheeler backwards and then down the side path to a rocky slab that sloped nose up at about a 30-degree angle. What? I tried to ask. My voice was drowned out by a roar behind us. Alice was crying really hard and gripping the steering wheel with a death grip. She looked in the rearview mirror, then slumped down and continued to cry. They're gone, she wailed. The water, the flooding. Behind us and below us, the banks have eroded away. They're gone. Her slender body shook with sobs. Oh, shit. What am I going to tell the kids? Gone? Ted and Carol gone? Oh, shit. Our kids. Carol's folks. They're not far away. My folks are gone, and Alice and Ted are on the other side of the country. And Ted and Carol had employees. Wait, why do I say they had? Why is that in the past tense? Am I assuming they're dead? Alice, how sure are you? Try the VHF contact again. Maybe they've managed to find a safe haven. Try, come on. She clung to hope. I turned on the radio. Nothing. And again. And again. And still nothing. The storm cell passed by, the rain stopped, and the sky cleared. It was all I could see from my lying position. Wait here, don't go anywhere, Alice ordered me blandly. She locked the parking brake and hopped outside into the cool air, leaving her door open. The key in the ignition beeped continuously for the few minutes she was gone. The road below looks clear, she told me when she returned. I'm going to try to get us down. I'll stop wherever it's safe and look for the sequoia again. And you can keep using the radio. So you didn't see any tracks? I asked. She shook her head sullenly. Alice slowly walked us down the mountain. We saw and heard nothing of our companions. She dragged us to a campsite where there was a cell phone tower. Alice pulled out her Nokia and called 911. When the cops get here, we won't say anything about what Ted and Carol were doing, right? Alice got worried. Right. Maybe you should wipe down Carol's Vio card if you have time and hide the memory cards. We don't need all of us under investigation for the next year or 3. That's exactly what I was thinking. The fraud and thefts were planned but haven't happened yet. The sun was already about an hour above the western horizon when the first helicopter arrived with rangers from Joshua Tree National Park, just north of us. A few minutes later, a U.S. Navy air ambulance helicopter from the Salton Sea Base just south of us landed. The paramedics thoroughly examined me and pronounced me alive, slightly shocked and hypothermic, with atrial fibrillation, meaning my heart was not working properly. I was quickly packed up and taken to Eisenhower Medical Center in Palm Springs. Alice, despite her objections, had to stay behind to deal with the Rangers and the sheriffs and highway patrol helicopters that arrived shortly thereafter. By then, I didn't know who was worse off, her or me. It was the worst Sunday in my memory. Sunday evening. I watched dusk thicken outside my room window. I was in good condition. Night observation, they said. They weren't really concerned about my reaction to the fracture. They were worried about my exposure to the outdoors, hypothermia, and my heart. My mom had atrial fibrillation, so I guess it's genetic. Cell phones were forbidden in the hospital. I sweated and waited for any word from Alice. The outside world darkened along with my mood. Thoughts of guilt crept into my head. I'd envisioned their deaths, imagined them being crushed by the cave-in. But what actually happened was far worse. And even though it wasn't my fault, and I had nothing to do with it, I still felt guilt mixed with pain, loss, loneliness, emptiness. The world I knew was over, sayonara. What would I do and experience if it didn't end this way? And Alice. Divorce. Defense. Depression. If only. If only. If Carol hadn't cheated on Ted. If they hadn't colluded. If Alice hadn't discovered their infidelity and we hadn't uncovered their criminal plans. If I hadn't fallen on a rock so we wouldn't have tried to escape in the storm. If we had escaped unharmed, but their plot was still wavering in the wind. If they had been caught, with or without our help. If they still lived. If only. If only. Around 10 o'clock, an argument was heard in the hospital corridor. The ward door swung open with a jolt, and Alice squeezed past two small Filipino nurses. Call goddamn security if you want, but you better get a couple of tough guys to drag me away because that's what it takes. She saw me and ran up. Oh, damn, Bobby. Oh, damn. She wrapped her dirty arms around me and pressed her sweaty face against mine. Oh, Bobby. Finally, she let go of me and stood up. Our fingers interlocked. Any signs? I asked. She nodded meekly. They didn't need to mount a big search. A chop helicopter spotted them on the way here. They found what was left of the Sequoia about a mile and a half from where we were, in a side ditch. The car had been torn apart. So were Ted and Carol's bodies. She squeezed my hand painfully. They're really gone, Bobby. She cried and pressed herself against me. I put my arm around her shoulders. We hugged each other and shook in silence. An authoritative nurse, probably the head of the ward, and two security guards came through the door, confronting Alice. Look, we're not very strict about visiting hours in situations like this, but you shouldn't treat my nurses like this. Miss Olson, you have 5 more minutes, and then my guys will escort you out. Don't waste your time. The nurse left. The thugs stayed behind. I've called everyone, Alice said. Carol's folks are bringing all the kids here tomorrow. They wanted to charter a plane and leave tonight, but I said no. My dad, Ted's mom, and your sister will meet us late tomorrow night at home. What are you doing tonight? I hope you're not going to sit through a vigil? Ha! You're not sick enough for that. No, I got a motel room on the next street over. I need to get some sleep. But I'll be here first thing in the morning and we'll figure out what's what. She leaned over and kissed me gently, just a faint movement of her lips. I'm already thinking about the future, I said, squeezing her hand. We're great friends, Alice. We're not soulmates. We're not a romantic couple. She nodded and squeezed my hand in return. And I really want us to stay friends, whatever it takes. She nodded again. Yeah, I'd like to stay friends too, but maybe with benefits? Her half smile was unsure. It was my turn to nod and smile. We could make it work. Epilogue. You know the story doesn't end here. We had long, tear-filled conversations with our families. Our children recovered faster than our older relatives. Life went on. The Riverside County Medical Examiner rightly ruled the deaths of Theodore Olson and Carolina Ortega accidental. No one but Alice and I knew of their betrayal and conspiracy. We buried them on Forest Lawn and hid the memory cards. Just in case. Ted and Carol were largely insured. The payments paid off our mortgages and left large college funds for our 4 daughters. Alice and I are still working, but we are not discouraged. Some of our work has landed on Mars. Some are headed to the outer solar system. We were and are proud of our accomplishments. Ted and Carol's companies have been taken over by their second persons and are doing quite well without their titled heads. Alice and I are half owners. The income is quite comfortable. We have decided that we are really friends with benefits and more. The Ortegas moved next door to the Olson house, with the pool, and I moved into Alice's bedroom. All we had to do was rearrange the furniture. Our friends with benefits status lasted only a few months. We were married on Halloween Day in a quaint and spooky Gothic hall near the Southwest Museum. The ceremony was a formal costumed masquerade. We were the colorful ones. Next chapter. Alice and I don't usually talk about what-ifs, but sometimes the topic crept up on us unbidden. We were lying in bed together. Hey, best friend, what now? She twitched her nose. Well, next time you can be the showgirl and I can be the burro. How about it? What, this again? You know, it's funny. Yeah, I know. It's funny that we're here. We never could have expected. We never thought it would be like this. I had no plans for you, I really didn't. I know. You've always been the perfect gentleman, and I've always been a hard-working mother, and we've kept in our own lane. Do you think maybe they thought we were... And maybe that's why they went where they did. I loved Carolina madly, still do. And I never thought about going anywhere without Ted. But they followed a different map. Mala mapa, bad directions. But how did they get on this page? I shook my head. And what happened? Was it divine justice? Alice put her fingers to my lips. You should know better. They were careless, that's all. No magical retribution. No karma, no fate. Bad luck follows carelessness. They were careless. End of story. My trained engineer mind accepted this. My old California mind, raised on missions, caballeros, and curanderos, was not so sure. It remains to say one last word about the prickly cacti, also known as Indian figs, Opuntia ficus indica. They grow in huge spiny clumps and delight the eye with their bright colors. The color of the flowers depends on the variety and locality, but they can be green, yellow, orange, or red. Local varieties bloom only in the most intense sunlight. These summer flowers seem to glow with neon lights. They seem to glow like Carol's eyes the last time I looked deeply into her face. I can never forget. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.